This is Lewis Hart for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store Forged Irish Stout. Delighted to be joined in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia with Adam Smith. We're here, mate. We are in Riyadh. The 5v5 is finally here. Good to see you, mate. How's things?
Yeah, really excited about being in Saudi for this huge event. And I know there was one a couple of weeks ago with Fury and Usyk, and I couldn't travel for medical reasons, which was a shame because I really wanted to be there for the Undisputed. However, being back here for something like this, which is just a bizarre and incredible competition to see between two of the promoters that have held British boxing up for so many years. And Frank Warren, we worked with at Sky for huge amounts of time, 15 years or something, before Eddie then came in, and we had a decade together. And obviously he then went to DAZN, and Ben Shalom is there now. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time with both Frank and his team and Eddie and his team. So it's incredible that it's actually happening. That the two of them are spending so much time together, sort of socially and obviously as competitors. But to see this 5v5 is it's a cracking idea. It's brilliant. It's something different. Two teams, 5 terrific fights at top level. Yeah, you want to be here. Dimitri Bivol as well, meant to be fighting Beterbiev. Unfortunately, that's not happening. It would have been a great Undisputed following the Undisputed of a fortnight ago at light heavyweight. However, Bivol's still on the card, and it's not just a card, is it? It's an event. And I think that's what we saw at the open workouts last night. We just flew in and caught the end of them, and just those huge screens everywhere. And I thought I was walking into Vegas, to be honest. It was crazy. And it's crazy what they've done. It's fabulous for boxing. Terrific what Turkey and Dr. Rakan and all the team here have done to put on these spectacular nights. It's been brilliant, and yeah, it's great to be back. I was here for AJ Valin and Deontay Wilder's upset against Joseph Parker, that one before Christmas. Back for AJ Ngannou, and back for this one, a novel competition, a lot of bragging rights. The two of them who despised each other for years and now sort of get on. Reminds me a little bit of Froch and Groves, who had a 10-year anniversary the other day. But yeah, when it comes to Saturday night, they'll be in different corners, and there'll be a lot of pride and machismo and all that at stake between the promoters, which is great. So it's a twist, isn't it? And it's one we're all looking forward to in and amongst a quite amazing time for boxing all around the world.
You've obviously seen Eddie and Frank from a broadcasting point of view, and especially in that decade that you worked with Eddie, there was a lot of back and forth with him and Frank. I suppose from the time that they worked with each other, when they started working with each other, they couldn't have been any further apart. Like, sort of like every interview they're throwing shots at each other. In your time working with Decade with Hearn, was there ever a push that try and work with Frank? There might be you might see some similarities, or was it always?
So I've got in my study an article that I did, an interview for Boxing Monthly when I took over running the boxing at Sky Sports, which was 2010, 2011 time. And one of the quotes there was, I want to get all the promoters to sit down and work together, because I think that would be great for boxing, for the fighters and the fans. And I remember one or two of them saying I was completely mad for saying that. It would never, ever happen. And yeah, at Sky we had Frank Maloney, Frank Warren, Ricky Hatton, Mick Hennessy, lots of different promoters. And Matchroom were pretty, well, they were always there, consistent, but just a slightly lower level. And then suddenly Eddie got the urge to leap into the boxing world. He'd always been a fan, but he had done golf and poker and other things. And I think he got Audley Harrison, had that Harrison-Hay fight, and I don't know whether it was the bug or whatever it was, but he suddenly just had this vision. And he and Barney Francis at Sky just sort of got together, and then Eddie and I worked for many years, and taking boxing from small halls to arenas to stadiums. But during that time, there was a lot of acrimonious back and forth. I think Eddie once told me he walked past Frank, and Frank hadn't noticed, and he didn't stop. But there was no way Eddie wanted to even be in the same room as Frank, and I know the feeling was mutual. But I did see with Frank Smith and with George Warren Two guys who just keep themselves under the radar, who have been brilliant for the sport, and people don't know enough about them, I don't think, because they do keep that lower profile. There's, Warren and Hearn, Eddie and Frank, and they love being centre stage, but George doesn't, and neither does Frank Smith. And I think they got together, and maybe with Spencer Brown's help, and obviously Turki Al-Sheikh and Dr. Rakan and everybody got together to bring them side by side and it was great to go to that first press conference in London where they were, that sort of first handshake, frosty moments between the two of them. But I didn't think it would happen, or certainly no time soon. From both sides, actually. I wondered if it might be Eddie and George, but I just didn't see that. It's different generations, and I think Eddie always says that Barry and Frank, if they sat down together, even though they were rivals, would always have plenty to talk about. And of course, Eddie and Frank have masses to talk about. They've got a huge amount of respect for each other, but they're both very driven, highly competitive, and they want to win. So that brings us to Saturday night, where we've got a competition which, you don't want to be getting on that plane on Sunday as in the losing team, or certainly the losing promoter, the losing lead of it. And there may be a second or third, and I'm sure. But these are great. This is great for boxing. I just love different things. I'm a purist. I love any level of boxing, whether it's 4-round or world title level. I just love the sport. But I also really admire different ways of entertainment. People ask me about misfits, they ask me about the YouTube fighters, they ask me about different competitions, and the prize fighter elements, the tournaments, things like that. And I think if people want to watch them and it's something different, absolutely there is a place. I remember when Eddie told me we were doing Logan Paul and KSI, and I was like, okay, I've got to go back and tell the team, all boxing fans at Sky, and then wider. But everybody sort of settled down, and we ended up having a fantastic time with the YouTubers like Bazinga and Joe Weller, and we had a great time in LA, and we all learned something, and it was fantastic, and my kids loved it. And so you've got to look at different audiences, and you've got to always be changing and thinking of the next step. We've got the Undisputed a couple of weeks ago, and this is the first time something like this is happening. 5 against 5, our leading promoters in Britain, and some great fights, which I don't think you or I can pick with any massive confidence. The winners, which is terrific, which is what we want. And I work for GBM, and obviously it's down a level, but we're always looking at that, the sort of 55, 45 fights, when you don't quite know, maybe the prospect doesn't have such an easy night, and you don't quite know who's going to come through, because you want that surprise. That's what the fan wants. And the boxing fan wants a story. They get gripped. Froch Groves 10 years on, that was a story because they got invested. There was arguments, there was bitter rivalry. You either were on one side or the other. And I think this is similar. You're either sort of a little bit more favourable to Frank, or you like Eddie a bit more. And it'll be a great night, and I can't wait for the fights, and really pleased to be here.
Away from, I saw Eddie and Frank working together. Away from that, this is obviously Saturday night is sort of not just the first time in I suppose in the UK. It's a dual broadcast as well. Obviously, it's on TNT and DAZN, and sort of the first one of this recently was Tank versus Garcia, which was on Showtime and DAZN as well. But since sort of the inception of Saudi Arabia and their sort of involvement in boxing, we've seen it more. We've seen sort of their events on Sky, TNT and DAZN. Where you've been heavily involved in broadcasting, what do you make it to see that I suppose all the broadcasters are working with each other as well?
Yeah, again, it's different times, isn't it? There was a lot of rivalry, not just between Eddie and Frank and Calla and Nissa and Ben and all the different promoters, but there's rivalry, friendly rivalry in broadcasting too, when it was BT Sport coming in and Sky originally, go way back, and ITV had most of the boxing, and then suddenly Frank brought his entire stable of Nassim Hamid, Bruno, Nigel Benn, and the links with Don King and Mike Tyson over to Sky, and suddenly ITV didn't have it, and Sky sort of had everything for a while, and then in came Satanta, and then Sky. We've always with Sky, I say we, it's part of my heritage, my life, my history. It's nearly 30 years there, and we literally had there was boxing every year for us, whether it was deals with HBO, it was deals with Matchroom, whatever. We had boxing deals with Frank, boxing all the way through. But I think that coming to sort of the Eddie times, it was very much, everything was on Sky, and there was no real competition. And then suddenly BT arrived, bang, they get Frank. Frank comes back. He's a brilliant survivor, Frank, as we know, the best. And he comes back, and it's all go again. And then you've got that competition, and it just pushes you as a broadcaster to try and get better. And now we're in an age of dual broadcasting, because fighters are obviously, and promoters are tied to their networks. So it's really interesting to see, and you wonder if one or other, or there's sort of three main ones with Sky, TNT, and DAZN, whether one will try and get more of the promoters, or whether one will just stay with one. You've got Ben Shalom on Sky, you've got Eddie on DAZN, you've got Queensberry on TNT at the moment. Is that going to keep going? Are we going to keep having the duels? We had 3 of them for pay-per-view events for Fury and Usyk. So, and that's, I think, quite confusing for the consumer, the customer. If you're sitting at home and thinking, okay, I want to watch it on Sky. Oh, actually, well, it's on this as well. It's on DAZN. I like the DAZN coverage, or I like it's quite difficult, isn't it? 2, 3 screens. You just want to watch the fight. But yeah, look, it's the way it is. We much rather have that with the fights being made. So if the fights are made, fine, you find a way to watch it. But I think it's great that there's so much out there now. I mean, you're a very busy man. I saw you in Poland last week. I was in London. Then there was the Leeds show. Now we're out here. It's terrific. It's great. It's a great time to be involved in boxing. Is it the best era? You can't really compare. There's lots of different highs. I mean, for me, AJ Klitschko around that time was a high at Sky. It was an amazing time. But then you go back, and there were brilliant moments when Frank Warren came to Sky, and we had Hammond beating Steve Robinson and Bruno winning the world title. You go further back and into the sort of big American days, what I grew up with, the Hagler, Hearns, Leonard Duran, Four Kings, and yeah, there's always different times, and people will compare and contrast. And this is a time where the Saudis, Turkey, and Dr. Akan are putting huge money and huge events on, and the fighters are benefiting massively, and the fans are getting the fights, the dream fights that they didn't think they'd get. And there's still great boxing in Britain, in America, and around the world as well. So yeah, it's just a different era. It's shifted to the Middle East, and while it's here, we enjoy it, and we see where it goes from here. We know we've got a big rematch in December of Fury and Usyk. We know that they're going on the road a bit with this big show in America in August, and at Wembley in September with Anthony Joshua. So yeah, it's really exciting times, and it's great we've got a show coming up at Wembley. I think that's brilliant. So they're intelligent, they're a young group here, and we talked off camera about the difficulty with Saudi Arabia at times before coming. Now you come, and there's a lot of change, huge amounts of change. Great seeing the women have great roles in business, and yeah, there's obviously massive growth here, and they want to bring entertainment and people to Saudi Arabia, and yeah, I'm sure you'll back me up on this, but the people are lovely, and treated extremely nicely, and it's actually a pleasure to come here each time we do for a big event. So yeah, look, there's it's a change, and they've got a big goal in 2034 in the World Cup, but they're doing some fantastic things, especially with the young academies here. You see the Mike Tyson Boxing Club, you see the kids coming through getting opportunities, and yeah, and for me, as always with boxing, it comes down to the boxers themselves, who are the key figures, no one else. The boxers themselves. Without them, we're nothing. And the fans. Okay? The fans want to see the fights. The fighters are getting paid. They're in the best fights. They're getting these opportunities. Happy days.
Yeah. You mentioned there about sort of the car coming to the UK, and I think as we was previously speaking off camera about obviously Simon Jordan on TalkSport, and his sort of him talk about the worries of potentially the ecosystem of boxing being ruined. But I suppose when you see it come to the UK as well, and still big fights being in the UK, it is a positive thing that the fights happen, and they're not just happening in Saudi as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we still have great fights in Britain, and I heard what Turkey had to say on TalkSport. It was great that happened. Fantastic after the sort of the difficulties on both sides, and wonderful to see Ed Huntley and the team, and obviously they're doing great things here, and to get Turkey to speak to Simon and Jim, we know Jim's coming out here, was brilliant. And Simon has his points, and he's. I think Turkey was listening, and I think that they will eventually have a conversation. I think they're talking about when the Saudis come over for the press conference for AJ in June. But yeah, look, Simon has very strong points. I'm a big admirer of him. I think he's an intelligent guy, very knowledgeable, and he's very passionate about boxing. I don't think he needs to worry too much that the fights in Britain, I think British fight fans are British fight fans. I think there'll always be times, and if you look at what we're doing at GBM, shows up and down the country. You look at Top Tier, what Johnny's doing with that. Other promoters, not just the TV ones, at top level, but Boxer have had massive shows on this year. Fantastic ones with Michaela Mayer, Tasha Jonas, Wardley and Clark, Lauren Price winning a world title in Cardiff with a blistering performance, and then you've got Riakpur and Billam Smith coming up at Selhurst Park. It's great. Plus, in the middle of all of that, probably the biggest rematch we've seen in the last couple of years in Taylor Catterall. And that happened in Leeds, and look at the atmosphere that night, and what a great fight the guys put on. So I think it's just really happening everywhere, and I'm really interested to see what Jim thinks when he comes here and experiences it. And I would love to see Simon come out as well. And I saw what Eddie said, and yeah, they're certainly now they're on the plane. But I think it's important because it is happening here, and I'm embracing it because I've seen boxing over many, many years in different areas, in different under different jurisdictions, climates. Whether it's America was the hot place, or Britain for a few years when we had those great box office events with the likes of huge amounts of fights with AJ and Hay and Bellew and the Forged Irish Stout, all of those. And then we've had massive nights in Germany with the Klitschko's. There's been lots of different areas. Saudi is the area at the moment where the biggest fights are being made. So we have to be here. We're boxing media, we are fight fans, and we want to embrace it. And I understand the difficulties and arguments, and that's something that Simon and His Excellency and Dr. Rakan will come together at some point, which is great. Have communication. But come out here and embrace it and see it. And also, let's see what happens when Turkey and Dr. Rakan and the amazing Salah team come to London and see what they put on, because obviously it's a different territory for them. So, yeah, I think this is all good. Boxing's always going to be a sport where people are going to debate, but there's been some fantastic fights this year in 2024. There's more to come. It's been one of the best years in terms of action and fights made, and fights we don't know the outcome to. Yeah. Isn't that great? I think so.
Definitely, yeah. Absolutely, for sure. And I suppose we'll just quickly move on. Last week, you mentioned previously there about how much boxing's going on. Last week, obviously in York Hall, there was another successful GBM show, and especially in York Hall as well. Sometimes that place can, it's not hard to get that going, but it's good to make it special. And it felt like a little special event there for GBM's debut, I guess.
York Hall, Bethnal Green is one of my favourite venues in any sport, in any place. Obviously Madison Square Garden, the MGM Grand, other great venues around the world, and it's been, York Hall has been something that's just iconic about British boxing. So many greats have fought there. Wonderful nights, brutal knockouts. I'm thinking when Oleksandr Usyk, thinking that Scrap Iron Ryan getting knocked out by John Thaxton. They all come back, don't they? Johnny Tapia coming in and fighting at York Hall. Johnny Nelson winning a world heavyweight title, WBF, at York Hall. All sorts of things. I think David Hay fighting professionally, had a great fight against Jacobelli Fragamini, but also I think got knocked out in the amateurs by Jim Twight at York Hall. I mean, it's just been a place of Carl Froch fought there, Ricky Hatton fought there, AJ, Fury. I think everyone goes through York Hall.
I was going to say, there was another one I was going to say actually. Not many people. I think it was just after he fought Roy Jones Jr. I think James Toney actually had a comeback fight at York Hall as well.
I think he did. Was that part of the prize fight?
It might have been, yeah.
Was he the prize fighter or an exhibition? I can't remember. It was something. James Toney was. Yeah, he was. James Toney, one of the great fighters of all time, and. bit past his prime, but it was fantastic. And I love your call because everyone's got their spot of where they want to be at one of the pillars at the on the balcony, back by the bar. There's all sorts of areas that people you find them in, and the changing rooms at the back, and you just wonder if those changing rooms could talk. What would they? The walls could speak. No, it's an amazing venue, and hats off to the GBM team. I'm not just saying that with my hat on. I'm saying that as it was an incredible effort to turn York Hall into something pretty different, to keep the history, but to make it look just GBM spectacular. It was fantastic. So the production was extremely high end. The atmosphere was wonderful. I mean, Reza Ali, when he came out, it was, goosebumps time. You normally get that at the O2 or at the Manchester Arena in a sort of mega fight, but it was fantastic. And yeah, the staging of it was brilliant. Cracking night, really good fights, some lovely stories. Love Michael King's ring walk, Tyson Gallagher becoming the first woman to win the British Super Bantamweight title. Casey Benjamin almost getting that knockout at the end. Lucas Bannigal coming through. Reza Ali, Lennox Lithgow. Fortunately, he was okay. That was a bad knockout, but really, really good performance from Reza. Tommy Welsh as well, having Conor Benn and others at ringside. Yeah, it felt like a big night in a small venue. So, and I think that's what GBM are. That we're putting on big nights, and it is at a level. I keep saying to Izzy, stay in our lane. It's we haven't got the biggest names yet, but good young prospects. The Kieran Malloys, really good fighter, I think he is. We've got Niall Berry fighting on June 29th in Coventry. Really like him. Danny Quartermain, fantastic sort of unbeaten fighters. Tiernan Bradley, lots of good stuff coming. Shaq Thompson, of course, who headlined in Rotherham. Hughie Fury back in Coventry, to be a great night at the Sky Dome on the 29th of June. But I think, it's been a really good period for GBM. Some momentum, a lot of people talking about GBM, fighters talking about GBM, wanting to be at the shows, wanting to be on the cards, on the shows. And, we're struggling to get everybody on. So that's a good thing. It went really well, and it was a really great night. I said to Izzy, it was tradie. It wasn't a sort of massive name, but sometimes you don't need it. It was just a really good night of boxing. It was fantastically staged on TalkSport YouTube, and got a good audience, great eyeballs on it, and the train rolls on. And unfortunately, I was honestly so exhausted, and sometimes I got to remember that I'm coming back from a pretty serious health battle with cancer, that I look after myself a bit, and I really wanted to go to Leeds the next night. I was desperate to for Taylor and Cattrall, but I just thought I was so exhausted after the promotion of the week, and it was a late night York Hall, and I just thought, no, I'll watch it on screen at home. And I scored it for Boxing News with Rob and Ben, and I just thought, okay, that was nice, and I actually sat back and watched it, and it was really nice doing that. I missed the atmosphere of Leeds. I know you were in Poland and people were busy, but Lawrence Okoli winning in a round, York Hall, the great rematch, fantastic times, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. And I suppose just a last couple from myself. We mentioned there about Turki Al-Sheikh on TalkSport, and he mentioned Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk 2, locked in for December 21st. Good to see that, and I suppose, how massive is rematch for Fury, and I suppose can he? Do you think he can turn the tide in this rematch?
Of course he can. It's whether he will. Fantastic to see the rematch. Really proud of both warriors, both tip-top heavyweights, going through with, yes, it was a contracted rematch. We thought it was going to happen in October. I like the delay to December. December's a good date because it was a hard fight. It was a hard fight for both of them. Oleksandr Usyk was brilliant, won the fight for me. But Tyson Fury had a number of rounds where he got it right. He got the distance and the range right. Lovely right hands. Don't think he used the jab enough early on. I think Usyk controlled those first few rounds. And that first round he was showboating, and I just think he sort of didn't start quick enough, Fury. But I thought Usyk was brilliant with his movement, his rhythm. I thought he cut the corners well. That southpaw stance. Did it against AJ in that first fight against Tottenham. Took AJ's jab away, centering straight away, made it uncomfortable. And I did think that beginning of the fight would be crucial. And if Oleksandr Usyk could get in a rhythm, which he did, but then the size seemed to come back into it. Fury getting his range. So yeah, for the rematch, if Fury can get his range, get back behind the jab, he's got all the tools, but he's had hard fights. Oleksandr Usyk as well, roughed up. He had moments in there, but he was the one that almost and maybe should have stopped Fury in that 9th round. Credit to Fury for regaining the legs, coming back as the miracle guy that he is, time and again. But I guess there's another way of looking at it. There's only certain amounts of time you can go to the well. He's going to be 36, I think, and Usyk's 37. Probably the youngest 37-year-old around, Oleksandr Usyk. But I think, yeah, for me, the first fight was a brilliant fight after a lot of hype. So great it delivered. Tyson Fury played a massive part. Don't think he won it. Thought Oleksandr Usyk deserved to win it. And an amazing story for Usyk. Winning 335 amateur fights, cruiserweight king, and cleaning up in a really tough division. Doing it away from home, time and again. Fighting on the front line for Ukraine. I mean, this is storybook stuff, isn't it? This is a Rocky. I mean, this is bigger than Rocky. And then he becomes heavyweight champion of the world. When people said against Eric Chisora he couldn't deal with the super heavyweights. The super heavyweights like AJ, who he beat twice, and Tyson Fury, who he beat once. I mean, take your hats off to Oleksandr Usyk. Absolutely brilliant, a phenomenon. Can Fury win the rematch? Well, he goes back, regrouped, lost for the first time. Let's see how he wants revenge badly. There is pressure on the shoulders because I think he doesn't really want to have 2 defeats to him and sort of have that big stardom slightly sort of fade. I think he'd be desperate for this, and if he can win the rematch, sets up either a trilogy or the fight with AJ. I mean, it just rolls on, doesn't it? So I think it's brilliant that it's locked in. We've got 5v5 on Saturday night. Cannot wait for it. AJ in September, and then Fury and Usyk again going at it in December. Yeah, brilliant. And they've got so much respect for each other. The two of them, they always had, and it's grown even more after sharing 36 minutes like that. That's what happens. And let's hope the rematch is as good. Sometimes they're not as good, but with Taylor Catterall, it was twice as good. Yeah. So let's hope that this one is fantastic, and what a year we've got to look forward to. An early Christmas present. But first of all, Turkey, Dr. Rakan, and Frank and Eddie give us 5v5, and it's we're locked, loaded, and ready to go, aren't we?
Definitely. Absolutely. And just a final one from myself. I did have to ask you about someone you've worked closely with for a number of years, Savannah Marshall. Yeah. She is fighting in MMA on next week. I know she's boxed on Mayweather undercards, signed to Mayweather, boxed in sort of a sold-out O2 with Clarissa Shields, headlined in Newcastle. Now she headlines in Newcastle, but not in the squared circle, but I suppose in an octagon. I suppose she's keeps off ticking off this sort of legacy in her career, and she does it again next Saturday.
Massively close to Savannah Marshall. I get quite emotional when I talk about her. I mentored her for 4 years at Sky. She's an incredible woman. She became, world champion back in the amateurs. Brilliant amateur. That win over Clarissa Shields. Unfortunately froze at the Olympics. Didn't go right for her. Her confidence was shattered. Rebuilt. Amazing credit to her. I thought was robbed in Rio. Turned professional with Mayweather, which is one of the most bizarre partnerships I could ever remember. I said to her the other day, I said, do you remember when you had your pro debut and your label, your card, what was it, lanyard? No, the wristband was cut off and your lanyard taken out the back door, and she wasn't allowed to stay for the main event after her fight at 5 p.m, which was just crackers. That didn't last that long, that relationship, but the relationship with Peter Fury has been unbelievable. Two-weight champion. Unified. She's chasing Clarissa. It's that defeat, isn't it? And Clarissa's in the cage, and Savannah's in as well. The Professional Fighters League in Europe are doing fantastically, and I think it's going to be a great night in Newcastle on December the 8th, week Saturday. It's close. And I spent some time with her up in the northeast a couple of weeks ago. She's on great form. She's really enjoyed the transition. She found it tough. I think when she watched MMA before, she was like, God, what is that? They're all rumbling around on the floor and didn't really get it. And when she saw Clarissa, she was like, she's terrible at that. And then she tried it and thought, this isn't easy. So I think the respect for Clarissa doing it has gone up. I think the rivalry is still there. They're still polar opposites, the contrasting personalities. And I think Savannah's desperate to get her back into the ring, whether it's in boxing or in MMA, in the cage. It'll be one or the other, and we see her debut on December the 8th. It's a stacked night as well. She said everybody on the card is better than me, and I'm topping the bill. But it'll be fascinating to see. It's another story, and that's what I love. I love things that people can just get hooked into. And how's she going to do? She was, she has and can still be a brilliant boxer, but how will she do in the cage, in MMA? Very different skills, techniques. We don't just want to see her stand up and knock her opponent out. A knockout in about 19 seconds. If you checked it out on YouTube, it's pretty scary. So she's got to be careful. But she's got the 4 ounce, basically nothing on her hands. So I think that power of the silent assassin might prove crucial. But I know she wants to go and have a grapple on the floor too. Yeah. She doesn't want to just win on her feet. So we'll see. It's really exciting. I think they're a great outfit, the PFL, and looking forward to seeing her perform on December the 8th in her new code. And obviously wish her the best of luck.
Absolutely, Adam. We've been going for a long time, so I do always really, really appreciate your time. Really good to pick your brains about all things broadcasting, boxing, and MMA, I guess now. I really appreciate taking time to speak to me. And I'm sure we'll be catching up sometime soon, mate. Top man. Thank you. Cheers, mate.